Here, our hero Wang Yuan slaughters his enemies in a single bloodbath by dismembering them and destroying their weapons and armor. Some see a tyrant, others a demon, and yet others a maniac in his bloodshot eyes. However, our protagonist isn't a fan of such designations. After leading such a player's slaughter, is that all he deserves? They didn't even bother to be creative. That's just what everyone called him. Whatever was his desire, though. Despite his unappealing appearance, he was perfectly at home with the terrifying moniker that has been applied to countless monsters. He mockingly challenged his opponents to think of more creative names. Out of nowhere, Wang Yuan, his true name, was called. For a brief instant, this startled him. Nonetheless, it had been quite some time since he had heard that name being spoken to him. Quite a while. He was well aware that no one on the Oros continent had the gall to address him by his given name, Templar of the Holy Temple, Jin Yuan. Riding a white horse and accompanied by an army of mages and holy knights, he had now made his way to the battlefield via the portal. He flawlessly portrayed the world's greatest hero and pleaded with Wang Yuan to cease, stressing that the moment had come and that it was still possible to do so. Jin Yuan's kindness and suggestion initially appeared to catch Wang Yuan off guard, but he quickly composed himself, emphasized the awkwardness, and complimented Jin Yuan's brother on his continued gentleness. Jin Yuan had also delicately rescued him during their previous encounter, which Wang Yuan recalled. Now, thinking back on their history, Wang Yuan let out a menacing laugh and confided in Jin Yuan, saying that he thinks he wouldn't have been able to kill so many players if Yuan hadn't saved him earlier. Hearing Wang Yuan's statements caused Jin Yuan to lose his composure and yell at him. Anger and wrath consumed him, and he desired to swiftly seize the opportunity to eliminate this cretin. Before Wang Yuan planned to fight, he wanted to appropriately irritate his opponent. Me? I'm alright. Yes. You are not happy. Come and kill me then. However, before he did that, our hero told him that our hero would never stop, regardless of how many times he finished him off or died. So, he continued to torment Jin Yuan even more. He plunged his knife into his shoulder, igniting it as he did so. A blaze burst up from that location, engulfing Wang Yuan entirely. As he spoke, his voice reshaped itself from the flames, assuring the haughty holy knight that he would remain a formidable opponent in the final battle regardless of whether he was a regular Wang Yuan player or the final boss of the Astral Continent. With those words, he transformed into a terrifying demon-like figure, complete with devil horns and long white hair, fitting for the role of final boss. With lightning bolts encircling him, Ego's wrath and fury flared in this alternate reality, and he sprung into action, charging headfirst into the next army that stood in his way, claiming that this was all part of his predetermined fate. Now we're taken back in time to just before the Great War, when an army of dragons and ice giants assaulted Asgard, thanks to another Flash. But that's not the narrative I'm talking about here. It took place in a parallel reality long before the Great War. In a gorgeous prehistoric landscape scattered with gigantic bones, there stood a solitary temple when the world of this game was still undeveloped and needed locations and customization. This happened long before our hero assumed the identity of Wang Yuan, and the appearance of this fifth holy temple was vital to his coming to this realm. Ultimately, he had his first awakening here. As soon as Wang Yuan opened his eyes, he understood his purpose for being here. Even though he appeared to have been staring at the drawing for quite some time, it was only now that he realized it was actually there before. Observing his hand, he came to terms with the fact that he was a part of the environment around him. In an instant, he understood that he was familiar with his own name, abilities, and the minimum health required to shift into any form he wanted. He felt as though he had known all this from the moment of his conception, and that this holy temple was rightfully his. He was aware that it was situated on the Uranosan continent, and that, as its sole ruler, he had absolute control over his surroundings. He then remembered something else as he got up from his throne and made his way to the exit. Something else crucial, maybe the most crucial thing he knew. Regardless of their stature or power, every one of his subordinate beasts bowed to him as he departed from the shrine. That he and his colleagues were here to accomplish a specific mission was therefore the most crucial thing that he recalled. Looking up at the bright blue sky, though, he knew he would have to wait a while longer to begin living his life's purpose. Indeed, every living thing in this virtual environment is patiently awaiting the arrival of the gamers. At that point, Wang Yuan and his minions would start to live up to their mission, to make everyone who entered their game world happy and have a good time. A pop-up displaying system, notifications emerged in front of Wang Yuan, interrupting all of his thoughts. The system expressed itself, "Not bad, King. You have remembered and realized your calling. Now, let me help and teach you how you should perform your duty." And our hero had no idea what was happening or what it was. Someone had the gall to tell him what to do, but who was it? So Wang Yuan queried the obscure window, "What are you?" The system voice addressed Wang Yuan as King, said he was the game's creator, and gave his name as Chum in response to Wang Yuan's question. His role would be to guide and instruct him. Wang Yuan initially denied the necessity for a mentor, reasoning that he was already the world's ruler. To him it seemed like a really absurd prank. An advisor was unnecessary for a monarch. He could achieve his goals without one. He was about to wave his hand and go his own way. After that, the system voice understood he needed to show Wang Yuan how important it is to have a mentor, how useful he is, and how really unconditional his authority is in this world. An entertaining display of taming a mischievous NPC was announced when the system window behind our protagonist lighted up with a brilliant red light. Suddenly, Wang Yuan was paralyzed and unable to move. His physical self seemed to be disobeying him. He yelled out, "What did you do?" without understanding what was going on. He wasn't doing anything remarkable, the system voice nonchalantly said. He was only getting ready to reveal his soul. The system went into learning mode just to show our hero that he was wrong. A pentagram and other demonic energy discharges materialized on the ground surrounding Wang Yuan, who remained immobilized. He had best be prepared to feel like he was about to die while exercising. The system had informed him before he entered training mode. To this day, Wang Yuan has no idea what this insane system is talking about or what is going on. Nevertheless, in the subsequent split second, the excruciating agony that consumed his entire being compelled all superfluous ideas to leave his brain, and a deluge of data poured into his consciousness. As the system started to implant all the information regarding the game's concept, mechanics, and processes into Wang Yuan's head, it began with the most fundamental elements, such the fact that humans are part of the Homo sapiens species and inhabit the universe we call reality. Wang Yuan had entered a virtual version of this real world. We made this virtual environment for fun. Everything you see is actually code for a virtual reality game. Not playable, characters NPCs are an essential aspect of this universe. Their sole purpose in the game is to amuse human players and enhance their gaming experience. Even though he had this kind of knowledge ingrained in him from birth, he was in constant agony and barely holding on to life. Streams of binary code added to his knowledge base, continuing this learning process for a considerable amount of time. At long last, everything was completed. This agonizing experience came to an end after a lengthy session of all the required lessons, leaving Wang Yuan alone with his damaged brain cells. That didn't last forever. As soon as he began to feel somewhat better, the system window reappeared, urging him to rise swiftly and abandon his pretense. Wang Yuan wanted to know more and wanted things explained, but he had only obtained a little knowledge. The data he gathered led him to a crucial conclusion. The existence of both the physical and digital realms meant that he and the entire universe were nothing more than computer code. His realization of all this was somewhat disheartening. Being told you are not real is not the most pleasant thing to go through. However, the system's voice shot him down, explaining that Wang Yuan was unique among virtual creatures due to his position as ruler of this planet. His existence carried greater weight than that of mere lines of code. Ultimately, he was instrumental in making the players happy. He was led to believe by the system that he was a cosmic being whose likeness appeared in real-life advertisements and promotional materials for the game, such as at conventions devoted to the franchise. The system provided him with evidence to back up his claims, including recordings from conferences, the amount of views on game-related videos and teasers, and a plethora of social media posts. Many individuals in the actual world were eagerly anticipating the game's release. It was clear that the outside world was just as impatient as the game itself, waiting for players to show up so they could join the virtual realm. Upon realizing all of this, Wang Yuan pondered for a while before speaking to the system voice, asking, "Why are players not yet able to enter the virtual world of our game? Who's preventing us from meeting if our game is so popular?" Wang Yuan was taken aback by the system's response, which read, "It's you, your royal highness." His wrath erupted as he struggled to comprehend the situation. He clenched his hands and bellowed at the system window, "Kid, are you making fun of your king?" The system had to explain itself right away, since it would never dare mock its master, and he was told the truth. His own experience played a role in it. The players were unable to access the game world until they were awakened. He was confused at first, but after giving it some thought, he admitted that he was to blame for his excessive sleep. But at least he was up, so they could let players into the planet now, could they? Once again, though, the system voice let him down by informing him that there were unfinished business. Already weary of the system's incessant justifications, our hero found this latest one particularly insulting. Because of this he became irate and said, "I am the king. Why can't I leave this to my subordinates?" The system, naturally, had solutions to all problems, including this one. It came to light that our protagonist was the only non-playable character NPC granted freedom of thought and action. Even Wang Yuan felt a twinge of embarrassment and flushed at such an award. After coming to terms with this fact, though, he only said that, truly, his subjects put too much faith in him as king. Wang Yuan dug in after hearing these comments. The unfinished portions of the global map needed to be filled in first, so he rearranged the bricks. Then he realized the celestial island was in the wrong spot and had to move it. After that, he improved the textures and added details to a number of sculptures that needed fixing. Finally, the world map was finished and made ideal after he rectified a number of things, rectifying all the mistakes the game creators had made. But that wasn't all. He still needed to fix the skill system glitch. After taking a few lightning strikes from the incorrect abilities, he got down to the serious work of dealing with the numerous of them. Roar of the Tamed Beast, aside from the cursed lightning, proved to be an entirely useless skill. Hence, he had to personally code an additional sensitivity for this ability. Furthermore, he was still tasked with verifying that all the other non-player characters were appropriately executing the commands. He utilized his dexterity to its fullest potential, but he could only use 2 hands due to the sheer number of settings. The system's congrats message finally materialized before him, confirming that all the necessary preparations had been accomplished. Wang Yuan attempted to regain his breath as he collapsed to the ground, exhausted from mending everything. He had his own ideas about this, but the system started telling him to train more and not be so weak right away. Using his king as a tool was excessive. Another alert indicating the blossom had been crushed appeared out of nowhere. Unhappy, our hero leaped to his feet. Oh no! The flower is in danger. We need to replant it immediately before the players arrive, he muttered under his breath as unexpected assistance arrived, and the voice of the system reassured him not to be concerned. The code to fix the bloom appeared in the system window a split second later. Witnessing this, Wang Yan inquired of the system. Given that this was a virtual environment, could the Sky Island sculptures and skill faults be corrected simply by executing the code, rather than requiring manual intervention? In a soothing tone, the system told him that it was feasible and even worthwhile. Thus, he was becoming increasingly irate and inquired, what about the NPC customization? He had invested the most amount of time and energy into that aspect. Laughing, the system explained that not only were all the game characters controlled by code, but he himself was as well. After a while, Wang Yuan lost his temper and grew enraged, believing that his efforts had been in vain and that the system could handle everything without him. In the end, he yelled out, "Are you toying with me?" The system attempted to reassure him by explaining that his participation was essential. After all, even though everything operated according to code, the system still needed authorization to accomplish some tasks, and he was absolutely essential to the completion of some of those tasks. The ceremonial moment to launch the game arrived after some time, and Wang Yan saw a sky portal opening, becoming larger by the second. As our hero gazed hypnotically, the system apprised him of the following. Logan has been initiated. The connection to the server is in progress and is 98% complete. The initial players began connecting to the world when this figure reached 100%. Players started signing up as soon as the game was available to the general public, and they could use this portal to reach the virtual world ruled by Wang Yan. Many people wanted to dive headfirst into this game's world because of the effective promotion, so there were a lot of players. "Hello, welcome to Orano Continent," screamed the system, greeting the gamers with a smile on Wang Yuan's face. He was overjoyed that they had arrived at his world without going via any intermediary. He wouldn't have to endure boredom on his own anymore. The first-timers who stepped foot in the virtual world had mixed reactions to their initial encounter, but the vast majority were pleased and amazed to be here. As one would expect from Uranos, the virtual world's building models, sounds, and stunning scenery were well received. But it seemed like another player didn't share his enthusiasm. He told him to quit gushing over the game because, in his opinion, it wasn't all that remarkable. What with all the waiting and all, he was now going to voice his disapproval. Some players formed teams to advance more quickly, while others were taken aback by the abundance of gift packages. As he studied the virtual environment in detail, another player made the observation that, although stunning, he would opt for an AI-powered game where each character had real flesh and blood, the entire planet. Another player overheard this and appeared intrigued by the subject matter. Nevertheless, he recalled an occurrence that was connected to it. A rumor also circulated among the players, and it spread like wildfire. Someone even went so far as to scare another player with the claim that a ghost is supposedly in the game. Yes, an intelligent specter or phantom. They were likely talking about Wang Yuan, who had hit an impenetrable wall on his way to the players. He begged the system to end the foolish magic that was keeping him from the other players as soon as possible. I don't see why he can't just step out of his royal role and welcome everyone in his realm. However, the system had a different take and told him to relax and think about the consequences if the final boss showed up right when the gamers had just started the game. As the last boss, Wang Yuan envisioned himself emerging from the bushes, terrifying the novices who had banded together to vanquish the slug, and armed to the teeth with a limitless supply of health points. The last boss had arrived. Because they would be too terrified to keep playing, they would just bolt. After visualizing this result, Wang Yuan moderated his intensity. He remained melancholy and alone, but he didn't want to frighten the gamers away from his realm. Consequently, he yelled out, "Damn it. Having too much power is bad." Thankfully, it seems like the system had a fix for it. It reassured Wang Yuan that there was another form he could take in order to approach new players in a calm and collected manner. Thus there was no need to be worried, even though he couldn't do it in his ultimate boss form. Such a recommendation baffled Wang Yuan, so he requested the system to clarify. After that, the system informed Wang Yuan that he was also here for another crucial reason: to act like a player. As a result, Wang Yuan lost all comprehension and became even more perplexed. He was so powerful, how could he play? Things ought to be engaging, the algorithm continued explaining. That is, like most human stories in the game. On the side of the protagonist, a trusted ally should betray them and become their worst adversary. Wang Yuan should make excellent use of his unique ability to think and act independently in the virtual domain to produce an exciting game experience and storyline twist to keep players satisfied, according to the system. The news that the game features a unique squad of players created for Wang Yuan only added to his excitement. He thought it was perfectly acceptable to pretend for a little while, so he gladly consented to play the role of an ordinary player. The king and last boss must perform a particular activity though, before he may be transformed into an ordinary player. He must cut off his heart for the transformation to take place. A swarm of birds broke the absolute silence when the system announced this catch. Wang Yuan was taken aback and speechless. Then why would he take his heart out? Isn't he going to die on his own? His heart, the system told him, was the data core that contained all the knowledge about the final boss. Wang Yuan would revert to his normal player status quo if he erased the data core. Wang Yuan continued to wonder if he could remove his heart without endangering his own life. After learning the fundamentals of being a Homo sapiens, the system began to make fun of Wang Yuan, implying that the king was just as scared to remove his heart as any other human being. Since Wang Yuan is not human, the system informed him, removing the heart is not an issue. Wang Yuan has the option to forego removing his heart if he so desires, according to the system. However, this could lead new players to lose interest and enthusiasm as they go through the game. Our heroine intervened just in time to prevent the system from erasing the code from the software. The enjoyment of the players would not be diminished by his presence. He didn't want the players to lose interest, so he accepted to this quest regardless of the repercussions. After considering the system's final comments, he will inevitably become king of this earth. The machine then requested that he confirm his choice by placing his palm on the window, and Wang Yuan fearlessly chose to remove his heart. Rapid action ensued the second his palm touched the scanner. Out of his chest, a mysterious red crystal materialized and began to radiate light. All of his energies started to drain out of his body as it detached from him and vanished as a powerful energy struck his chest. His health points likewise plunged to an unknown limit, and his stats plummeted by hundreds of thousands. Again, his body endured excruciating agony until, with the last flash, the system utterly seized his center. His lifeless boss body dispersed in the wind and vanished into thin air as a lean, stocky man's physique materialized from beneath his shell. After finishing, he joined the other players as a novice. The system congratulated the king on the successful completion of the transformation procedure. That game he was about to play was going to be totally different, yet even with the notifications telling him everything had changed. Have you achieved your accomplishments? A problem existed. Redness engulfed him, and pixels appeared everywhere. Notifications began to flash everywhere as the system abruptly failed. Rebooting the game core and the automatic recovery of the firewall were both unsuccessful due to an invasion of the game core. The virtual world began to crumble before our bewildered protagonist's eyes as a result of all this. In his player form, the king found himself encircled by red caution prompts showing enigmatic mistakes all over the place. He had no idea who or what had broken into the system, and he had no idea that it was all about to collapse. When he finally glanced up and saw what was occurring to the world he had shaped so diligently, the situation became much clearer. From the sky came destructive crimson beams, each one carrying immense power that could destroy the earth and level mountains in an instant. All of a sudden, it was obvious that the system that had supported the monarch throughout was the only one responsible for this madness. Out of frustration and bewilderment, he raised a fist as if to strike the system prompt, but since it lacked any discernible shape, he ended up striking the air. However, the mistakes kept piling up. The algorithm had successfully set up a whole new course for the game. The world's top authority had been confirmed to be this system entity known as Chum. He started by destroying Urano's version 1.0 from the ground up. An immediate transfer of all recently logged in players and their data to a new globe would take place. So far, we have made 1% progress. Red beams of destruction continued to terraform the entire planet. Not even the enormous cities were able to escape their impact. We were 30% along the way. Players were angry and bewildered because they had been tricked into purchasing a defective game at launch, when all they wanted was to have fun and try something new. Presently, we were 70% through. At long last, the system's chum came clean about his role in causing this disaster. Just over the king's head, a diamond prism of an unidentified material began to emerge. Data transfer and current player progress have finally achieved 100%. As it showed a mysterious logo, the system prompt briefly gave the impression that it had taken physical form. The prompt seemed interested in hearing about the exciting new world the heroes who came to rescue the king would be exploring. The system left a charming little emoji and conveyed its eager anticipation of how everything will unfold with an air of sincere joy. The world the king was meant to govern, the society he had built, slowly crumbled to ashes, and he was enraged to be caught unawares by all that sweet, eager things. Even though he had lost his regal powers, he attempted to rush and catch up to this so-called chum. In the midst of the nuclear devastation happening in his neighborhood, the system prompt persisted in teasing him and encouraging him not to be envious. No matter what happened, the system assured him that he would always be its most anticipated player, as it were real and unadulterated. The enormous explosions that were destroying not only the inhabitants, but the entire world eventually engulfed him. The system hoped that it and the monarch would have another opportunity to meet in the future in its last prompt. After that, the system became an artifact infused with the mysterious symbol. It seemed as if this artifact had been tossed into the pristine waters of another planet. New, pure skies began to form when the old Uranos continent was destroyed, and the artifact sank further and further into the infinite seas. After everything had been generated, including vegetation, the players, including the monarch, of course followed. Being spawned in a different area than the last boss, Wang Yuan hit him like a ton of bricks. He went from being on the shore of the bay to a sandy desert landscape in the blink of an eye. For kilometers, he walked in complete darkness, leaving a trail of quiet, scorching sand in his wake. From his vantage point above the dunes, he perceived what seemed like a distortion of reality. Even if he was an expert in the Uranos continent, this was not it. Within the time of only a few seconds, everything had changed. He was embarrassed to have let himself be fooled by a tiny, malfunctioning control panel, given his status as a free, willing NPC and monarch. At this moment, he felt too ashamed to even claim the title of king. To rub salt in the wound, Wang Yuan was greeted by a different system panel upon his arrival in Uranos, which bore no resemblance to the one that had tricked him. Perhaps no one else could have seen through this prompt's obvious dishonesty or blatant error than him. The Uranos he toiled so hard to shape is not this. Every player in this new universe was being alerted to the strange layout of the settings by the prompt, which pointed out that there was no logout option. The players, under the impression that it was all a ruse, assumed that the producers would rush to remedy the issues so that everyone may play the game without worry. The prompt responded as if it had heard everyone's gripes by assuring them that the path to reality would never be blocked. More illuminating. Even though the prompt emphasized that each game will have its own set of rules, players were beginning to suspect that there was more to these issues. Players discovered that their generated characters had been changed to seem more like their real-life counterparts. In their minds, the game might be a lighthearted homage to old manga or something. The system said that in order to find out how to escape, everyone had to make it to the main island alive. As I peered in the direction of the possible exit, it became clear that this seemingly harmless chore would prove to be everything but. The shattered panel was now only fooling everyone. According to Wang Yuan, the truth would eventually be revealed to the people. The first order of business was for him to locate some players out here. With him at their side, they would have a fighting chance. Some seemingly random event occurred the moment he set foot in the area surrounding the mystifying forest that lay ahead. He was welcomed by the system as a traveler. His journey would begin with the Yunzhou exploration. He may choose an appropriate weapon according to his abilities to make this exploration go more smoothly, as the quest would be 3 days long. Level 1, without a title, main weapon, starting class, mana, 10 GP, a single point across all stats, no luck, and nothing else were the traits of Traveler Wang Yuan. As Wang Yuan beheld his character's horrific transformation, he froze in his tracks and trembled. In his own planet, he had been the most powerful being, but he had fallen to the level of a scrub, vulnerable to a single bullet from any enemy. Focusing on his pitiful basic statistics, Wang Yuan felt that a single point across the board with no luck was too harsh. When he saw such a heinous act, he was at a loss for words. The system went so far as to congratulate him on attaining the player's starting combat power ranking, which was insulting enough, but he actually belonged to the weakest category. There was a person named Jin Yaoan who came out on top, followed by Wang Yuan, Dwyer Linne, and Wei Jini. Seeing his name posted on the ladder for everyone to see was humiliating for the monarch, and he shook with embarrassment, and was rendered speechless as he looked down at the list. Now he appeared to be going to have to start at the very bottom. too much for him to comprehend. He was once the most powerful monarch on the continent, capable of doing whatever he wanted. Not only did he lose his regal look when he became a regular player, but the system also sent him to the bottom of the standings to begin with. It was so unbelievable that Wang Yuan began to believe he was being played for a joke by the system and everyone else. The evaluation of each player's actual body composition is the basis for the starting qualities, as further detailed in the prompt. In addition, players would have the chance to choose a special ability that is specific to them and their history. This ability would remain dormant until a mysterious condition is met. To Wang Yuan, this was a somewhat strange environment. He ought to be ranked dead last, not second to last, the system said, because he doesn't actually have a body in the real world. The player ranked last on the leaderboard is an intriguing character. Wang Yuan was about to begin exploring when the system kept reminding him that there are numerous ways to improve one's attributes in this game. But before everything else, he would get to choose his first weapon. The defeated monarch's countenance now bore a solemn look, and he immediately agreed to the system's suggestion that he introduce the weapons. Everyone has the option to begin the game with one of 4 different weapon kinds. The system suggests the versatile and dependable sword if your strongest suits are defense and strength. If you value wisdom above all else and would rather avoid close quarters fighting, the stalwart and magical staff are great choices. If quick thinking and manipulation are your strong suits, then go ahead and adopt the system's suggested weaponry, the agile daggers or the sturdy bow. Starting classes will be determined based on each player's decision going forward. The original Uranus' design was plainly identical to what Wang Yuan has finally found. Weapons also served as a class indicator in that past world. Assassination allows you to be a menacing person who lurks in the shadows. Wearing heavy armor allows you to be a courageous and unwavering fighter on the battlefield. Or perhaps you're more of a sniper mage who likes to stay out of harm's way while wreaking havoc from behind. A cunning and swift scout who uses his knowledge of nature, instincts, and weapons to stay one step ahead of his enemies. You can take a quantum leap in power by switching classes once you've mastered the corresponding weaponry. Each class has its own unique route to advancement. Wang Yuan heaved out a sigh of satisfaction. It appears that his beloved environment was not extensively altered after all, not that it need alteration anyhow. He thought it was flawless. He will benefit more from the outcome if there are fewer modifications. The old world systems were second nature to him. All he needs are minor adjustments, so. After giving it some thought, he decided to begin with the stealthy and sharp utility dagger, so that he could better assist other players. By selecting this dagger as his primary weapon, he has also triggered the Assassin Starter class, which causes the system to upgrade his initial outfit to the complete Assassin's kit. The Assassin's equipment is a perfect blend of mobility, aesthetic points, and speed, providing a +1 boost to strength and a +3 boost to agility. All the proportions were right for an assassin. Wang Yan noted that there was no change when he looked at his character attribute panel. Then he ought to have been stronger, didn't he? A little bit more powerful even. He frantically swiping away the prompt to see whether any of the statistics had changed. In that same moment, he inadvertently made contact with something that ought not to exist in the material universe. It felt as though he had reached the very core of this enigmatic universe. For an instant, the system's congrats message followed suit. He had touched a so-called key memory, satisfying the requirement to activate a special ability. He would not only get a skill, but also an exceptional gift package that he could use once he reached the main island. The last boss's strategy was altered by this. Despite his dismal statistics, he may be able to turn things around thanks to his special ability. Since he formerly had control of the game's panel from within, he may have unintentionally unlocked this. For a split second, everything fell into place the second his fingers brushed upon that crucial recollection. Slowly but surely, Wang Yuan began to be encircled by an immense force that seemed to be bursting forth from the system itself. It praised him for discovering an unknown special skill once the light gradually faded. Seeing the one-of-a-kind talent labeled as unknown deflated all the excitement and anticipation he had been building up to that point. Nobody told him what the skill's name was, but it was level 1, had a 1 movable character limit, and could be used unlimitedly. A jumble of meaningless strings of text was essentially what it was. If the world's laws were encoded, then this one-of-a-kind expertise would have no other explanation. Something unexpectedly struck him square in the jaw while he was venting his disappointment. A staggering 4 health points were lost to that blow. The force of the blow sent him flying through the air, and he attempted to yell out a curse word as he went. An integrated method for filtering profanity is available in the system. Wang Yuan made every effort to control his movements as the impact of the punch gradually diminished. As he descended to the earth, he held the starting dagger in his hand and moved like an enraged beast. Whoever or whatever sent him hurtling through the air had no idea how powerful it was. When he finally got a good look at the perpetrator, His first instinct was to assume it was some terrifying elite monster. However, it turned out to be a pink slime, the standard fare for adventure game beginner monsters. Wang Yuan's disastrous character traits caused him to fall like a fool in response to a small amount of goo. His face turned red from shame and wrath. When a common slime has the potential to defeat you in such a manner, who could resist doing the same? One slime even at this level had significantly higher numbers for Strength 5, Defense 3, and Agility 5, compared to the former King of Uranos. Since slimes do not exist in the real world, his grievance with the system on the monster's lack of evaluation based on their actual bodily composition was foolish. Another congrats message had also been triggered by this encounter, marking the beginning of the major plot quest to attack the slime's base and reveal the way to the tiny island. Clearly outclassed by the well-prepared human, the pink monster leaped in again. Their differences in character were simply too great to be bridged. It would take more than one direct blow for him to sustain a career-ending injury. Using better methods was the only thing he had that could be seen as a solution. All of the strategies he had learned as the last boss were still fresh in his memory. He drew on his vast store of knowledge to overcome the slime's raw stat disparity and deliver a lethal dagger strike to its body. He had hoped that this would gradually reduce the monster's health, but breaking the slime's defense was an insurmountable task, as his attack was weaker than the target's. He did absolutely no harm at all. Looking back, it appears that the data computation method he was accustomed to had also been altered. Failing to breach defense in the old Uranos would still result in 1 GP being deducted. As he pondered the numbers, an idea occurred to him that might be useful in his current situation. Looking over his encrypted unique talent again, he noticed a line that might represent the number of movable characters, which could provide some clue as to what was going on with this ability. Wang Yuan quickly opened the characteristics window in order to do an experiment. He may simply be describing the type of data displayed in his stat window, if a movable character indication is present. Now, instead of staring at a static screen, he could interact with it by touching the window. That was fantastic. That encrypted special skill is now truly unique because of this. The man is capable of truly handling it all. Control his movement and stats. At the moment, he can only choose one character at a time when selecting qualities is an issue. Once he chooses luck, he is unable to change his stats and must quickly allocate the points to another area. The pink slime was prepared to launch another assault, while he was still reeling from this enormous revelation. Wang Yuan was completely preoccupied with the mechanics of his new ability, completely ignoring the monster and leaving himself vulnerable to a fatal blow at any second. A self-assured grin spread across his face as he turned to face the little devil. He glanced at his attribute panel and saw that his strength had increased from a pitiful 1 point to a whopping 10 points. It was high time that this initial adversary went silent for good. From this point on, the fight was meant to be a piece of cake. Using his newfound strength in conjunction with his tried and true methods, he should have no trouble vanquishing that pink slime. Despite Wang Yuan's embarrassing fall to second place with just 2 GP, the slime still prevailed. Even though he was on the verge of death, he persisted in using a variety of strategies that were ineffective against the slime's defenses. The character's luck and strength stats were reset to 0 and 1, respectively, due to his botched character placement. Upon further investigation, the system did provide him with a tip on the need for at least 1 point in each attribute column following placement. He had underestimated how difficult this would be. Wang Yuan had assumed he could simply change his stats, but it seems he was wrong. It was like the system was enjoying seeing him go through the motions of trial and error at this point. Since it was against the rules to change his stats with individual characters, he had just one chance of passing the test. His maximum health was 10, but he was now down to 2. Nonetheless, he was left with no alternative but to take risks. The system alerted him that he had dropped below the safe value, and that he needed to recover immediately after using the special ability to target his HP. He silently reassured himself that everything would be fine as the pink slime advanced on its target. Once Wang Yuan discovered the mechanism of his special power, this filthy scum would never have a chance to harm him. He utterly destroyed the novice monster with a single, barely detectable swipe of his dagger. According to his statistics, assassin Wang Yuan only had 1 point of maximum health, but he turned the other 9 into a +9 boost to his strength. Even the one he made didn't bother him. He was rewarded with a beginning HP potion once his proficiency was upgraded to novice through proper utilization of the encrypted special skill. His strength value was momentarily set to 10 in his character attribute window. Since he was now officially at maximum capacity, the system had removed the alert about his HP level. The slime monster actually split in half at the spot where Wang Yuan's dagger sliced through it with ease, suggesting that the struggle was more complicated than it seemed at first. Along with the introduction of the new slime, updates were made to the main plot quest. The only way for him to reach the little island's interior was to destroy the slime's base. Killing 2 creatures was the objective this time. As soon as Wang Yuan saw the danger intensify, he bolted for safety. The story's progression was completely off, and he just would not accept it was happening. At this stage, slimes shouldn't be able to separate. He had other plans for his universe. The fact that slimes in his world were essentially different was another important clue that had eluded Uranos since before. Slimes are blue in his universe. These pink slimes, which are moving at incredible speeds, are not something he can recall. Nonetheless, he recalled the malfunctioning system instructing him on parasitic monsters whose aberrant coloration distinguished them from their natural form. He went so far as to say that the system was so on point with its fashion sense back then. According to his suspicion, these pink slimes are really parasites masquerading as something else entirely. According to Wang Yuan, it was bad news when the parasite's color changed. As a result, the algorithm made use of the parasitic plant Cuta, which divides into 2 parts in order to germinate and change its attack strategy. Simply put, he and the system ensured that these monsters cannot be defeated in the same way as regular ones. Instead, they would perpetually divide and proliferate. The only means to fight these anomalies, though, is something Wang Yuan knows about because he is one of the builders of this world and its inhabitants. Using his encrypted unique skill, he transferred most of his 10 strength points to agility. This time, he'll show you how an actual assassin uses maximum speed in combat. With lightning speed, Wang Yuan zigzagged his way past the monsters, effortlessly navigating the space between them. His only action was to let the 2 pink slimes tumble over each other. Out of nowhere, their squishy bodies began to harden and, in the end, break like fragile porcelain. 2 tiny, black pearls coated in pink slime juices rested between Wang Yuan's fingers. He casually disregarded the parasitic pellets as the creatures' corpses dissolved into nothingness. The system then praised him for revealing the enemy's true identity, even though he had removed their parasite core. As a result, he acquired 2 parasites. Attacking the parasite's base was the main story task, and it was rated as a D rank. The trick introduction quest line has been completed by the final boss. He finished the main story task in 29 minutes, putting him somewhat more than 71 hours and 30 minutes ahead of the competition, even though he was second to last on the combat power leaderboard. He increased his present exploration progress to 6% and received 10 skill points as a reward for the assignment. In addition to the 2 parasites, he unearthed the assassin's fundamental skill and obtained an exploration compass. He felt uneasy about having to face such a formidable and cunning creature so early in the game, even though he had no trouble completing the first objective. I can almost guarantee that other gamers would struggle. Nobody could possibly come up with a good solution to this cunning main objective, and Wang Yuan had his doubts. While he was contemplating other players, the exploring compass began to jiggle and make a noise, as if directing him to go in a different direction. When we return to the real world, we find that one developer of this game is getting an overwhelming number of calls. As they continue to get calls requesting the formation of a specialist rescue squad to assist the players ensnared in the game, the staff of the cyber security agency responsible for its management are becoming increasingly alarmed. The rumors that a player will die if they remove the VR equipment are only one example of the false news that they have to debunk. Despite everything going on around him, a man with long gray hair kept his cool. He came clean about how their company's reputation had taken a nosedive and expressed his interest in hearing more about the inquiry into this virtual reality game. This shrouded figure heads the cyber security agency's technical investigative branch. The so-called phantoms are responsible for the vast virtual reality game. Nonetheless, this is an implausible assumption that they have been monitoring. Seated with one eye covered by his scouter gear, the chief drew deeply from his cigarette. If the Phantoms have indeed created a complete game that attracted attention and captivated many players on opening day, then this Urano is truly remarkable. Everyone on Chief Lu's staff has to stay in touch, and he wants everyone to watch how this tragedy unfolds. Another investigator materialized with a cheerful grin and some excellent news as he was letting go of the first one. It came out that one of their members had just managed to get past a login for Urano. Even Chief Lu, who never smiles, couldn't believe they let one of his own people to plunge headfirst into the unknown. This was a monumental event. Upon returning to Urano's version, one finds Mr. 1. Point status, who has transformed into Mr. Final Boss, in possession of the Exploration Compass, a trusted companion for travelers that is exclusive to the present map. Near the parasitic pink slime town he just cleared, he can use this to detect allies, foes, and even vital artifacts that will help him reach the main island. Somebody or something is hidden, and the compass is pointing to a treetop location just above him, where he can't see it. A panic shriek erupted from above the tree as Wang Yuan jolted it violently. Unexpectedly, someone was knocked to the ground as a result of his kick to the trunk. He prepared for the worst by keeping one hand on his blade and the other on the map. What came tumbling down from that lofty perch was a man in a dark green cowl, gasping for air and covered in coughing fits. Without hesitation, Wang Yuan confronted the man and began to question him about his identity. His hiding spot atop a tree, and his general demeanor gave off a very suspicious vibe. Also, he seemed to be struggling to come up with something to say, as he stumbled over his words. The man's final comment was that the tree's fruits were really mouth-watering. He was obviously not telling the truth since he was munching on leaves instead of fruits. This time, the system commended Wang Yuan for discovering his first trip buddy. His compass will now reflect this new man. A common goal was also set in motion by this meeting. It was easy. All he had to do was gather travel companions so that everyone could have the greatest trip possible. While each guest has their own private beach, the airship that will transport them to the main island will wait for everyone to gather before taking off. Time is of the importance because volcanic activity has been happening more often recently. 4 more buddies are required for him to complete the objective. Anyone without the exploration compass will not be able to access this mission. Their present demeanor is one of non-aggression, so they are free to relax and trust whomever they meet. This was Wang's first encounter with a player, but he was too busy reading the task to notice. Because he came across as excessively intimidating, the old final boss NPC briefly pivoted to avoid frightening the gamer. To pull this off, he pretended to be the suspicious man and munched on some inedible tree leaves. As he awkwardly smiled, the player struggled to comprehend that his foolish logic was yielding results. He acted as though he had never communicated with anyone before, spitting out meaningless gibberish as a result of his embarrassment. The man began to consider the possibility that Wang Yuan belonged to a specific group, the type of person who is naive and only knows how to fight ever since he escaped from the monster base incognito. As he fought his pink slime, he attempted to watch other gamers fight theirs. In all his travels, he had never witnessed an assault on a base executed with such ease as Wang Yuan's. Even in the first mission, some poor folks would meet their demise, and seeing those sights firsthand was terrifying. He still has no idea how to talk to this guy who killed 2 bad guys so simply. Stumbling forward, he approached the strange assassin with the intention of asking him a question, while casually calling him bro. His first objective was to gauge Wang Yuan's true strength. He said he had been passing by when he inadvertently spotted the terrifying assassin fighting off some slimes. While assuming the personas of both the assassin and the slime, this individual went to great lengths to simulate the combat, right down to the sound effects. He asserted that ever since he beheld that breathtaking sight, this peculiar assassin has formally become a deity in his heart. Rob Guy should have been able to defeat the monster base given to him, according to Wang Yuan, who argued that this was only a beginning job. The stranger began to feel uneasy and embarrassed when that was mentioned. It seems that this guy's objective has encountered a minor obstacle, and out of everyone on this tiny island, maybe only the assassin Wang Yuan can lend him a hand.